lawsuit right there. So the best way to guard against the lawsuit is just don't even look at anybody who's been unemployed. But these are the unintended consequences of government regulations. But all this is going to have to come down. The labor costs are going to have to fall. Americans are going to have a much lower standard of living in the future. And anybody who has dollars is going to have a much lower standard of living in the future. And if you've worked a lifetime and you've saved your money, and you've got money in dollars, you've got a pension in dollars, you've got a portfolio of bonds, you've got cash value with an insurance policy or something like that, you're going to lose. You're not going to get your money back one way or another. Either there's a default or there's an inflation, but either way, you're not going to get your purchasing power back. So you have to take action now. And I don't know whether you've got months or whether you've got a year or two, but you don't have a lot of time. And the key is to get out of U.S. currency, to get out of any debt instruments that are denominated in U.S. dollars. If you're going to own debt at all, find sovereigns that have much better fundamentals, that have better fiscal situations, that are going to pay you back in a currency that's not going to be debased. Better yet, own a lot of real things, own companies. You want to own stocks, particularly those stocks that are going to be able to benefit from the increasing purchasing power of the emerging markets, the people who have been living beneath their means. The Chinese, I mentioned cars in China, their automobile market is now larger than the U.S. automobile market. But the big difference is 90% of the people in China buying cars are paying cash. I mean, only 15% of Americans can pay cash for their cars. They can't afford cars. China is a huge market for cars in China, everything. Because people are saving, people are working. So you want to own businesses that are selling to those consumers. You don't want to own a business that's dependent on Americans. Because our days of consuming are over for a while. We're going to have to go back to producing and working and saving, and there's going to be a lot of austerity one way or another in the U.S. economy. So you want to be invested in the companies that are going to benefit from this realignment of wealth and purchasing power. Whether or not ultimately we do the right thing, I mean, if we go back to a free market, we can rebuild the country. I mean, if we let interest rates rise sharply, yes, it's going to be painful in the short run, but it's going to be a good thing in the long run because high interest rates will mean that you can get a reward on your savings. It'll mean more people will save. It means less people will borrow and spend. It means we take the money away from Wall Street, put it right back in Main Street. It means that a business can get a loan to grow, to expand, to produce stuff. Right now, businesses can't get any credit because it's all going to Wall Street or it's going to government. The government is borrowing all this money. If we get the government out of education, how many people here are students here at UCI or Nevada? I can't really see, not too many. But I mean, if we get the government out of education, then education prices can plunge. That'll be a good thing. I mean, it won't cost so much money to go to college. Of course, not as many people will go because we quite frankly we have too many people going to college. I mean, people go to college, they're there for 4, 5, 6 years. They major in some, in sociology and some crazy subject. And I mean, they're not prepared for a job. I mean, plus, why should you major in something like engineering? We used to make fun of those majors when I was in college because they were not at the parties. They were just studying all the time. Especially if you're on a government guaranteed loan. I mean, if it was a free market, if you wanted to borrow a bunch of money to get a sociology degree, nobody would lend it to you. Because how are you going to pay it back with that degree? If you're going to major in computer science or engineering or something real, and you were going to a decent school, you probably could get a loan. But so we can have cheaper education. If we get the government out of healthcare, we can have a lot cheaper healthcare costs. So there are a lot of positive things that can happen in the short run, in addition to what we have to go through. But if we do all that stuff, great. But if we don't, like I said, there's no way the U.S. economy is going to recover without higher interest rates, because low interest rates are part of the problem. Part of the solution is higher interest rates, but you can't have higher interest rates without pricking these bubbles, without collapsing the banks, without collapsing the housing market. So all that stuff is going to have to happen. But regardless of what it does, the people who are going to lose the most are people who are retired, people who have built a lifetime. Younger people, it's not as big a deal, because if there's a financial crisis and the assets are wiped out, if you don't have any assets, your liabilities are wiped out. So if you're a kid and you just graduated with $100,000, $150,000 worth of debt, hey, wiping out all the debt is pretty good. Because when you're talking about trying to inflate away the debt. There are winners there. I mean, the government wins because now it doesn't have to pay back the money it borrowed. A lot of people who have a lot of debt, they're the winners when the debt is repudiated or inflated away. The losers are the people that spend a lifetime saving. The creditors, they're the ones that get wiped out. A lot of people, you know, it's hard to go back into the workforce. If you're 70 years old and you're living on the interest on your muni bonds, and now that's gone, and now you got to go get a job at 70 because you've been wiped out, that's not easy. You know, if you're 22, 23, I'm fine. You know, you have your whole lifetime to earn money. If you've spent your lifetime earning money, and then you watch it evaporate, what are you going to do? And of course, some of the young people, if we never do the right thing, if you're a young go-getter, you can leave, you can go to another country, you can get a job, you can get out, you can escape. What are you going to do if you're 70, 75? No country's going to take you. You can't emigrate, you can't get a visa to go to another country if you're old and broke. You know, at least if you're young, you got to get, you know, they'll take you. If you're old and rich, they might take you because you're bringing in some capital. But if you broke because you had all your money in dollars, you're stuck here. So the key is to, you know, to protect your wealth now, and if you do that, you know, I think it's not, you know, living in America might not be a bad thing if you got a lot of gold and you got a lot of foreign investments, you got foreign currencies. Things are going to be cheap here because all your neighbors are going to be broke, so they're not going to be outbidding you and stuff. All right, I got. So anyway, let me. Where are we going to? We got 2 microphones here and here to take questions.
Yeah.
Right.
Fellow Austrian economist Mark Faber believes the next great geopolitical crisis will be between the Western world, led by the U.S., versus the Eastern world, China. If a military conflict were to arise, how would that change or alter your forecast in interest rates, emerging market currencies, as well as possible forced debt forgiveness?
Yeah, well, I mean, a military crisis involving the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, obviously something like that can happen. Maybe it can postpone some of the problems, or maybe it will accelerate them. I mean, you know, we can't afford the military. I mean, if we had we're already spending enough as it is during peacetime. You know, imagine if we had to ratchet it up. And of course, if that led to higher interest rates, if it caused oil prices to rise more, I mean, I don't think that, you know, a war or something is going to get us off the hook here. It might actually accelerate the pace of our demise. So I mean, we can think about that movie Wag the Dog. Well, let's just. I don't think that. I don't think that's a likely scenario for the U.S. Oh, and by the way, too, I don't know if we'll have any extra room, but I might as well mention it because I'm at UCLA tomorrow before the event, and I guess there is some open seating. I didn't know that, but I'm not really sure how many they have. We're going to have a debate, and I've got some left-wing economist that's going to debate me. It was hard to find one, though, that was willing to go. UCLA took a long time, and they were offering, you know, free airfare and hotels. See, I came on my own dime. But we were trying to pay some of the left-wing economists. They finally found somebody willing to show up, but none of the real top guys would come and debate me. But we'll have kind of an Austrian versus Keynesian debate with the econ department at UCLA. So we'll see.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got a quick question for you. In 2003, I bought some homes in Oklahoma. It's a long story. We inherited some money, and I bought them there because prices were so high here. And they have gone up some because we get roughly $550 in rent, and I paid $40,000 for the homes. My scenario, I mean, this is my own belief, is that the government's going to choose inflation, ultimately. What do you think is going to happen to homes, I mean, that are bringing in an income? Because what I do worry about is, if huge unemployment hits, those homes won't bring in an income. I mean, even though they are now. But I'm just saying...
Well, you're answering your own question. I mean, if we have a lot of inflation, high inflation, real estate prices are going to fall dramatically in real terms. They might go up nominally. But the problem is, if we have a lot of inflation, let's say right now, and I don't know, I'm making these numbers up, I don't know exactly what they are, but I probably could be close. But let's say a typical American family is spending 10% of their earnings on food and energy. 40% of their earnings on housing, on rent, or their mortgage, stuff like that. Well, let's say that the dollar collapses and all of a sudden food and energy are 30 or 40% of the household budget. Well, that's going to squeeze everything else down. And now there's not enough money really, because they're still paying taxes, they're paying other things. So all of a sudden, they can't afford to spend 40% of their income on rent. Maybe rent has to come down to 20% of their income. So how does that happen? Well, people just take roommates. People that are living in their own houses, they just double up. Sometimes families can split up a place, and you can have 2 or 3 families living in the same house. Some people might decide to rent out rooms. So if you've got a bunch of rentals, and now all of a sudden all the houses in the neighborhood are renting out rooms, it's putting downward pressure on rent. So if the country is getting poorer, if people are poorer, then rents have to come down, because all you can do is rent based on what people have. Now, if you own property, maybe there's some property here in Newport Beach, right on the ocean. Well, somebody from Japan might want it, someone from China might want it. So you have a bigger pool of potential buyers for beachfront property in California. So, but if you're talking about out in Oklahoma, you're talking about property for just regular Americans that have jobs. And what if they don't have jobs? And what if they don't have income? So